Okay. Hello. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. It is 11 o'clock. I know you guys got a bit of a runaround with the room switch. I do apologize for that. I've heard it was pretty crazy on the back end. I don't know exactly what happened. But thank you very much for coming to this panel. It's my first time paneling at MAGFest, and this is like 3-4 times as many people as I thought was going to show up. So thank you so much. So welcome to Why Games Can't Get Sailing Right. After reading the guidebook, I was like, I really need to shorten that title. That took up like 4 lines of text. But let's get into it. So who am I? I go by Tater Pudding online. I'm a cosplayer. I started cosplaying about 10 years ago. Deeply, deeply passionate about cosplaying Polynesian characters. I was Royd from Dispatch yesterday. I do a traditional version of Maui from Moana. My Instagram handle is up there. I did a panel on Polynesian rep in media at Katsucon last year as well. Speaking of Polynesian, I am Tongan. There is my Maui up there. It might be a little small for you guys in the back. I come from a country that is credited with sailing around the South Pacific and colonizing or settling most of the islands. Yeah, specifically colonizing. You don't expect it from the brown people very often, but we kind of messed up on that one. But so sailing is in my blood, and obviously I am a sailor. I worked as a sail instructor on small craft for 6 years. I now sail competitively on a J111. For those of you who are not familiar, that is a racing boat that is 11.1 meters. It's like 35, 36 feet long. I'm not very good on conversions. And my captain has his own Instagram account. If you want to follow us, he would love that so much. He had a whole PowerPoint on our social media statistics at the end of the season. And that is Obsidian as in the rock, underscore sag as in sagging, underscore harbor, because that is our home port. So that's who I am. That's why you should listen to me and believe what I say. The other thing we're here for is, what is sailing? Merriam-Webster defines it as the technical skill of managing a ship, the method of determining the course to be followed, the sport of handling or riding in a sailboat, a departure from a port. I am here specifically to talk about the kind of sailboats, the kind of boats you see on the screen there. That is a picture from one of the races we did. Excuse me. But Merriam-Webster does not mention the wind, but that's kind of important for the sailing that we're here to talk about. So sailing, according to me, is using sails to capture the energy of the wind in order to propel a vehicle. I say specifically a vehicle and not necessarily a boat, because the region where I live here in, well, not here, in New York, the bay freezes over sometimes, and they have special, like, things on skates, and they sail across the bay, and it's super fast and it's really scary, and I try not to mess with it too much, honestly. But to actually get into it now, I have some fun games with sailing. Skull and Bones is also up there. Yeah, so we have Sea of Thieves, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I feel really got some good aspects. I think a lot of people who are not familiar with sailing played that and were like, sailing rocks. Windbound is a game that I've played. I really enjoyed that game. You get a lot of customization of your boat. Sid Meier's Pirates is a classic. If you haven't played it, please do. And I mean, we could be here forever and ask, say other games that have sailing. But there's one thing specifically that they all have in common. Does anybody have a guess? You're not allowed to answer. You already spoke about the answer before the panel started. Does anybody want to guess? You have your hand up. That's technically true. That's technically true. In the black shirt there. That is close enough. I will give it to you. They all do technically take the wind into account, but the wind can only help you. And what I mean by that is, if you've played Sea of Thieves, you can sail directly into the wind. The wind is never exactly a detriment to you. It can help you, go faster, but in reality, that's not how sailing works. So we have listen, there's an exception to every rule. So we have a term in sailing called irons, and this is a diagram I use when I teach sailing. Points of sail, we can get really into detail, but I have a limited amount of time, so we're not going to. Basically, the red zone, you can't sail into it because your sails need to catch wind, and if you're directly into it, the only way you can catch the wind to help you is to go backwards. And so, I think that there's some things that can be done with that, and we'll get to that later. But by and large, for your casual gamer audience, if you tell them, hey, if you face, this 90-degree section, you can't move. They're not going to find that very fun, right? So it's not necessarily accurate that, Sea of Thieves, all the other games I mentioned, let you sail in any direction of the 360 around you, but for your casual audience, it's more enjoyable. And I'll come back to it later. We have more to talk about that. But I'm now going to go into a multitude of other things that these games sort of don't necessarily count for or don't get right. We got to get the technical stuff out of the way before we can talk about the fun stuff. So speaking of wind, we have wind speed and direction. Most games do account for direction at least. You might see some things about speed if you're like in a storm, but generally speaking, the wind is the wind and it is facing a certain direction. Unfortunately, sometimes there is no wind, and that just kind of sucks. Like, imagine if not even 90 degrees, it's 360. They're just like, nah, you're just a sitting duck. You can't do anything. This is a picture from a race I did in October. You can see the water is like glass. It looks like our sails are full and out, but actually, if you look closely, there is somebody holding the sails out, just trying to get anything. It was blowing, I think, like half a mile an hour. It was like, believe it or not, we did not finish that race. We dumped that. We had to drop out. Some people did finish, believe it or not. There's some boats that do really well in low wind, and we beat them every other day. But on days like this, they beat everybody else. Purple Haze, I've got beef with them. They're our rivals. And on the right is Windfinder, great app if you're ever on the water, showing a direction of the wind in my local area. Going along with speed and direction, we have tides and currents. If anybody knows a game that actually takes these into account, I would love to hear about it and test it out, because I don't know one. And they're really intricate. It kind of makes sense that they're not taken into account. You have to think about moon phases. This is my local tide chart. You can tell when the full moon was. The high and low tide on January 3rd, when we had the full moon, was so much higher and lower than like today. And so you have to think about moon phases. You need to think about time of day. The strongest current is actually halfway between high and low tide. Where the hell did my laser pointer go? Because if you don't know how tides work, basically, I hope you can, no, you definitely can't see that. Oh God. There we go. Okay, so basically, when you have high tide, all of the water is trying to rush in around the land and fill in the area. And then it sits there, and then it shifts to low tide, and all of the water then rushes out of there. And this video, actually, same race, no wind. That buoy looks like it is zooming through the water. That buoy is not moving at all. And that is not wind action. That is just the current. That is just water rushing around that mark so fast. So if you can imagine why we did not finish, we also had to account for that. There were some boats that just threw the anchor and waited for the wind to pick up, and those are the ones that actually finished. My captain didn't keep an anchor on the boat because he said it was too heavy. Another thing, and this one I do think that games really should include, because I'm not a game dev, so correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it would be a huge load to work on. We swap sails constantly. We have different sails for different wind speed, storm sails. We have sails for specific directions with the wind. This video that I will play is it's a spinnaker. It is basically a huge parachute you put in front of your sailboat when you are going the exact direction of the wind to just catch everything you can. It's the same material as parachutes. It's just made to catch everything. We keep 3 of those on the boat per race. We very often use all 3 in a race. We have different jib sails, which is the sail in the front of the ship. We have different mainsails. If we swap mainsails, something really went wrong, though, honestly. Like we shredded it or something, and I have shredded a sail, and thank you, Captain David, for not making me pay for that. They're very expensive. But yeah, so like much like race cars, we swap sails out constantly. And it's fast, and it's fast-paced, and it requires a lot of skill, but is easy to learn. This specific swap is something called a letterbox, because you pull the spinnaker through a slot. You'll see what it is. You can tell I wasn't on the boat this day because they were slow. I'm really the muscle on the boat. That's kind of the only reason they have me there. That should have been in the boat by now. You do not want it getting wet. It gets heavy, and also it gets musty, and it smells really bad. We pull it in, and we just stuff it below deck, and then we put up a different sail. So there's constant swapping of sails, and you need to do it fast, because if you don't have a sail up, you're not catching wind. And if you're not catching wind, you're not moving. And so I've gone through a bunch of technical things of like, oh, well, they should put this, they don't take this into account. They don't take this into account. But another thing that all of those games have in common is that sailing is not the main focus of those games. Sailing is, in most games that involve sailing, a means to an end. It is to help you get somewhere, to make a substitute for fast travel that's enjoyable. So it's not super fair to compare, real life sail races to those games. But we have very intricate games that do account for a lot of things. Racing sims, they share a lot of similarities to sailing. Tires, weights, and aerodynamics are almost a direct relation to sails, weight, and hydrodynamics. Obviously, I just spoke about swapping sails, swapping tires. We can think, I've mentioned probably a million times now that it's really fast. Think about like F1 pit stops. It's a whole race in and of itself. Weight is super important to both things. It feels like every race car is made out of not every race car, but a lot of the Formula Ones are like majority carbon fiber. I've raced on boats where the captain was like, you're not allowed to bring glass bottles because they weigh more than tin cans. If you want beer, you need tin cans. And we were only allowed 1 pair of shoes. And I'm like, it's going to storm in the middle. I want my booties. And he was like, well, you're going to have to wear them the whole time then. I'm like, okay. So weight is hugely important. And then aerodynamics and hydrodynamics. We also have weather conditions and terrain. Both types of races, you change your course or like hitting the apex in F1 racing, depending on weather condition, boats around you, and both need to consider terrain. I sort of skipped over this bullet point earlier because I'm a little nervous. But underwater terrain is also super important. When I was talking about currents earlier, I totally should have mentioned this. But it hugely affects how the currents work. It's not just that all the water's flowing out. If it's deeper, that means there's more water, so the current is flowing faster. So both things need to consider terrain. It's just that for me, the terrain is not necessarily visible and is underwater. But that's what I have charts for. And then we also have precise movements, course planning, and complicated right-of-way rules. Hitting the apex in racing translates to rounding marks in sailing, turning around buoys, or whatever they tell us to sail around when they're telling us where to go. Plotting courses is similar to going over your race lines, and both types of races have hugely intricate right-of-way rules. I couldn't tell you about all of the F1 rules, and the sailing ones can be really complicated when you're going around a mark. There's a lot of shouting between boats sometimes because that's how close we are. But in sailing, usually you'll just get disqualified if you break a rule, ironically, unless you hit the boat, in which case you just need to do a 720, and that's your penalty. And so the obvious question, why don't we have sailing sims? Well, we do. No offense, if anybody from who made VR Regatta is in the room, I hugely apologize. Your game's great. But most of our sailing sims honestly aren't that good. Even VR Regatta, which is a sailing sim that I have played, the controls are kind of clunky. And it still doesn't take into account tides, currents, swapping sails. There's a lot of things that it needs to work on. And yeah, sailing is really hard. It's really complicated. It takes a lot of time to learn. I was recently in actually this race that we won. We get a commemorative hat. I was at the party afterwards, and one of the boats was talking to us, and I was asking about their captain. They were like, "Yeah, well, she's really new to it. She's only been sailing for 10 years." So just an idea of how much experience you really need before you're considered like an intermediate sailor. And so I've thrown a lot of technical details at you because I want to try and get to the fun stuff more than all the technical why sailing is complicated and hard. But we have one little game to demonstrate the difference between like why racing sims are easier to do than sailing racing sims. And this is, we're gonna add conditions to both races and see how it affects our courses. So we're gonna start with boundaries. The race car is just trying to go from the left, do the hairpin, and get to the right. And the sailboat is going to try and get from this red mark to this green mark. This is a course we do a lot when we're practicing in real life, my boat. So we have boundaries. I don't think the one on the right is super hard yet. That's pretty much just a straight line. And believe it or not, the race car is just going to go around the hairpin. So we're pretty simple to start, right? And then we're going to add that the wind is coming from the north. Does anybody want to guess what the race car is going to do? Same exact thing. Does anybody want to guess what the sailboat is going to do? You in the black shirt had your hand up again. Zigzag. Yeah, hey, you're banned from answering questions. You used a technical term. You know too much. Yeah, so the sailboat is going to tack or zigzag up the channel so that it doesn't sail it can't sail directly into the wind. And I added that we'll do dry tires for the race car, and I'll throw an A1 up on the sailboat, which is a type of sail, light wind sail. Don't get overwhelmed by this next one. We're going to add topography. Okay, so things are a little more complicated now. So, again, anybody want to guess what the race car is going to do? You and the Oilers? He's going to go around the hairpin. Does anybody want to guess what the sailboat's going to do? Explode. It is gonna zigzag. You are technically right. I changed its sail just to be fun. We have an A1 1.5, slightly heavier wind. Still dry tires on the race car. And now we're trying to stay in the shallower water because there's less current there. And we also want to be aware of hitting the ground. Believe it or not great to do in a sailboat. I am not part of this club on our boat yet, but according to the captain, every one of our crew members has what we call a shoal, which is basically a shallow area that we have named after the crew member that crashed into it. And then we were coming back from a race, and the captain was like, "Hey, you should sail us back." And I'm like, "I don't want a shoal named after me." And luckily, I didn't get one that day. Or any day. I still didn't have one. And now we're going to add, it's 4 p.m. Race cars really care about what time of day it is, right? Maybe he'll turn his lights on. And the sailboat now, we got a lot more complicated. We're swapping sails in the middle. We're going to stay in the shallow area to avoid the current. We're on a bit of a reach here, so if you have the time, you throw up a code 0. I know you have no idea most of you have no idea what I'm talking about. And then once we're back to regular tacking upwind, we'll swap back to our A1.5. Try and stay on the side here where it's shallow. We unfortunately have to get into the deep water here. You can see I planned for the boat to sort of get pushed. That's why it's curving and not going in a straight line anymore. And then we'll make it back to the mark there. One more. It's a full moon. Race cars care about that, right? Racers care. Werewolves care about that. You're right. The race car driver is not even racing anymore. He's tromping around the woods somewhere hunting for prey. So the sailboat doesn't change that much, honestly, in this one. We just need to account for more current. Once again, race car has not changed at all this entire time. And we've had to think about all these different things for the sailboat. This is the actual last one. It's storming. Does anybody want to guess what the race car is going to do? Okay, wet tires. And actually, in researching this, I found there is apparently a more optimal line for when the road is wet, even if you have wet tires on. Didn't know that. You learn things. And if it's storming, I'm not going to mess around with the sail swap in the middle of this. Things can get dicey. That's how we shredded a spinnaker this year. Not me, but that's how a spinnaker, brand new spinnaker with our team logo, was shredded this year. I don't know who did that. So we're just going to throw an A2, keep a similar course. A2 is a heavier wind sail. You can tell the numbers go up as but where the troubles in this arise, if you've ever sailed in Sea of Thieves during one of those storms, it's not necessarily the direction you're sailing that's the issue. It's how it's affecting the boat. The gusts of wind, the wet deck. I just got new boat shoes, thank God. I'm not going to be slipping around on the boat anymore. You'll see that later. And so it's really that the crew is struggling in a storm more than the boat itself. So we have all these complicated issues with why making sailing an accurate depiction of sailing in a game is so goddamn hard. So is it an unsolvable problem? Are sailing games doomed? Believe it or not, they were not. They did go over, but they're all okay, and the boat's also okay. This is a great example of how wind speed is not accounted for in games. They got hit by a gust of wind, something no game thinks about, but is a lot of fun in sailing. No, obviously not. Sailing games are great. Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I had a whole slide about great sailing games, right? So obviously sailing games are not doomed. The key is not necessarily to focus on realistic sailing, but what a normal casual gamer, casual sailor would find fun about sailing. And so we can still take some of these aspects that are, important for an accurate depiction of sailing and adapt them, maybe doctor them a little bit to make a game that is enjoyable to a casual gamer still, but is still, somebody like me can go in there and be like, yeah, I am sailing. Wow, look at that. And so, yeah, we need to use those features to help the game. There are a lot of, for example, if we're talking about tides, maybe we don't necessarily need to think about all the current that is created by them, but we can have like a water level indicator. And again, I'm not a dev. If everything I'm saying is like way out of line, you're like, that's way more work than you think it is, then I don't know, I guess you can leave. But so there's real life examples of islands that disappear wholly at high tide. Caves that fill with water at high tide, you can only access them during low tide. I think those are great ways to hide Easter eggs in your games. Or, there's a lot of things where it's like in Sea of Thieves, it's like, oh, this event is only on for a certain amount of time. Well, you can have the cave, it's only available at a certain time of day. And that's the only time you can access it, and you need to complete the event in a limited amount of time before the water traps you in there and you suffocate. And if we're talking about wind direction, you can lock late game areas behind these things. If there's a current that keeps your boat from there, or the wind is keeping you from a certain area, Wind Waker. Yeah, I think you can use these things to make it accessible to players, but still enjoyable. Accessible to casual players, but still enjoyable to higher level players. Some other ideas. We have achievements. This is one I feel very, very strongly about. If we look at Peak recently, you have your achievements visible on your sash, and I think this is something that has been so overlooked in sailing, and this is the easiest idea I have in my slideshow. Sailors got tattoos for achievements. Why hasn't that been a thing yet? Okay, sailors got a swallow tattooed when they reached 5,000 miles. My mom actually, believe it or not, my mom's like a way bigger sailor than I am. She has her first swallow. She's working on her second swallow. She thinks she's going to get it by next year. I'll let her know you all said that. You have achievements just for getting to places. Crossing the equator, you get a turtle. Crossing the international date line, you get a dragon. And these are things that could, in Sea of Thieves, if you're in PvP and you see this guy just decked out in tattoos, you probably don't want to mess with him. And you're like, that guy knows what he's doing. I think it's a great way of customizing your character and like identifying with your character and really like looking at your progress in game. We also have wind speed and direction, which I've been rambling on about for 36 minutes now. Continuing from the last side, I think using weather to keep players out of certain areas, if not entirely, but as a skill check, right? I showed you what tacking up that channel looked like. If you were entirely new, that channel might just be entirely cut off to you. But if we think about it as like an optional Dark Souls boss, you're going to have players who are going to just keep trying to get up there until they figure it out. And so it doesn't necessarily, you can have an NPC who teaches you how to do it later in the game, but it doesn't necessarily block you off from it, but it can serve as something to increase the skill ceiling to your game, which I think the best games have a low skill floor and a high skill ceiling. I think creating hard to navigate areas is a lot of fun. If you think of games where like movement is a huge Hollow Knight, Silksong, we all love Silksong, Celeste, right? Outer Wilds. Like movement is great. So if you are looking at something and you're just like, that looks really hard to navigate through, I want to do it. When I first played Sea of Thieves, my friends hated me because I was like, we're sailing through those rocks. And they're like, you're going to crash. I'm like, but I won't crash next time. And skill trees. Skill trees, I think, is something super cool. If we look at real world sailing, there are people who are so specialized in certain things. Pam, who is we call her our bow babe. Um, you'll see her later in a video. Uh, she can see the wind on the water. Like literally, because you saw that boat that like almost flipped over because it got caught in a gust of wind. Pam sits on the bow and she'll be there and she'll be like, gust in 15 seconds. And I'm like, are you sure? And then boom, 15 seconds later, exactly hits us. I've been asked to do it. I don't know what she's seeing. I've got no idea. I'm like, you got me here for muscles. Don't ask me to do a wisdom check. There is a lady who, she doesn't even sail. She can tell you if you're trying to cross the Atlantic, she will say, you need to sail into the Gulf Stream here, and it will carry you here. She does not go on the water. But there are just some people who are so hugely specialized into certain aspects of sailing. And I think that skill trees that represent that would be a lot of fun. We've seen plenty of games that have huge spanning skill trees, PoE. Barotrauma is the example I have in the slide because I play a lot of Barotrauma. Who could have guessed I like nautical games? But in Barotrauma, you have skill trees specialized to your job. You know, like you're not going to ask your gunner to perform surgery on somebody. It doesn't make sense. So I think skill trees and expanding on that is a great thing that could help these sailing games feel more accurate, help real sailors feel immersed in the sailing of your game as well. But we have one big question that I know I said tattoos I feel very passionately about. This is probably my second most passionate thing. POV. Ooh, interesting response. So we have the two obvious ones. Third person or first person. Third person is a very common choice. It allows for good understanding of your surroundings, good spatial awareness. You can see the other boats very well. You can see, obstacles around you that you might hit. And then we have first person, which is the correct choice. Third person over the shoulder is an acceptable option, but you're on thin ice. I think first person is way more fun. Is it because I have been in that position in real life and I know what it's like? Maybe, but that sort of pulls away from the point of my slideshow, so we're going to ignore that. It makes spatial and situational awareness a skill you need to develop. Again, we're talking about increasing the skill ceiling. So like, if we talk about my example of Sea of Thieves, you can just sail in the open water. There's a low skill floor, or you can, if you're being chased, you can sail through the rocks and dodge somebody else, and you have a higher skill ceiling. I have a bunch of games progressing from more third person to more first person. This is Skull and Bones. Was anybody else like hugely upset when that came out? I was so sad. But so we have Skull and Bones, which just feels like it made all the wrong decisions. We have Sid Meier's Pirates, which great game, very near and dear to my heart, but this is not exactly exemplifying the feeling of sailing. Assassin's Creed Black Flag, we all love that. Sailwind, great game, very fun navigation game, more than a sailing game, I would say. Recommend it if you are looking for a challenge. I had to quit after like 2 sails because I was just like, this is just real life for me and I know what I'm doing too much, so it's not a challenge. Black Wake, which was, I feel like, the YouTube special for a little bit, a few years, maybe more than a few years ago. I might be getting old. And then Sea of Thieves, which I think Sea of Thieves nails the vibes of sailing. It definitely skimps out on some of the technical aspects, but the vibes are immaculate in that game. The first time I played it and I was cresting over waves and like sailing through the rocks, I was just like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. My opinion has like slightly changed because I've played more of it and I'm like, I would enjoy a little more technical work on it, but it's still a lot of fun. So if you want the right vibes, I really do think first person is essential to bring that into real life, maybe give you guys more of a real life, like this is the difference. We have two videos, one from our team's social media page. Thank you to the captain for sending me all of these videos. And no offense to him for saying that his video is worse than mine. And then we have a video that was not posted to our social media that was recorded from one of our crewmates. He had like meta glasses, which I think is fun. We're going to start for this. I do, again, want to reiterate, I did not make this video. It is not my music choice. Both of these are about a minute and a half. Hope you're ready for the rave in like 30 minutes. So you can definitely see some of the technical work that we're doing here, but it feels a little detached. You know, it's not like you're part of the action. You're watching the action, which is its own sort of enjoyment. But I think being a part of it is a lot more fun. We got too much power there. We caught a gust of wind we weren't ready for it. That's why we had to dump the sail. So yeah, so like it's fine. That's fun to watch. You know, I'm not saying it's not, but it's you definitely are detached from the action. Here is another video that doesn't have music and I think is more fun. I can like hear the sea shanty in my head as I'm pulling that line. Talk about slipping and how I needed new boat shoes. I didn't go in, don't worry. But even just that, you know, this video is already getting more reactions out of you guys. It's even if it's not conscious, you guys feel more involved with this. It's a J111. I don't do metric I think it's like 35. The captain's looking at a 121, which is 1 meter bigger. I guess that makes a difference to him. Here's an example of a sail change where I'm pulling down the sail. It does look like I get, you know, maybe dangerously wrapped in the sail. I didn't almost die this time. I have almost died though. I made it out. Our left. Yeah, there's Pam, the bow babe. Oh, wait, I forgot the video, the vibes video. I'm so sorry. This video is so important. This is not even racing. This is us coming back from a race. We're not singing sea shanties, right? We're singing ABBA, but it's close, right? And like the vibes in this are just impeccable. We're just hanging out, you know, it's not even high urgency. We're heeled over, which is something I think more games should involve because that's fun and dangerous, and those things go hand in hand. But we're just cruising, you know, we're just having a good time. Pam's up on the bow, partying it up. I think she had like, I don't know, she had a lot of drinks. But like, look at even just this last frame. That's beautiful. Sailing's so much fun. Go back to, oh God, am I done already? Whew. So in conclusion, my third grade teacher said I always need to have one of those on an essay. Sailing is a lot of fun. Sailing games are still fun, but they could be better. And I think we should always strive to be better as people, as sailors, as devs, as whatever you are in your life. And so I think that there are a lot of things that are being overlooked. I do think that despite the state of VR Regatta, it had the right soul, right? They had sailors on that dev team to advise them in how to make that game. It might have been a sailor who started. Some of these sailors, some of these guys who own boats, they've got so much money. It's crazy. I'm on my boat and my captain's like, I'll fly you to Florida for a race. I'm like, I don't know if I'm paying my bills this month. But so, yeah, so The so I'm pretty sure VR Regatta was just like some sailor's like passion project, and he just dumped money into it. Um, and good for him, honestly. I'm hoping that that's a stepping stone for other devs to like look at it and be like, oh, maybe we should, talk to other sailors and see how we can improve the sailing on our game. And if you want to talk to me, absolutely hit me up on my socials. Thank you everybody for your attention. This was it's I think it's a good thing they moved me from panel 7, but wow, that is what a turnout. Serious about advising people. It doesn't like not even in a professional sense. I've helped people with like D&D characters. They're like, hey, I know you sail, what kind of tattoos would my character have? And they show me a map of their world, and I'm like, that place looked like it would be a bitch to sail through. He'd definitely have a tattoo to brag that he did that. So I love talking about sailing. Who could have guessed I applied to do a panel about it? If you ever want to talk about sailing, hit me up. I would love a follow. At Tater Pudding _cos is my cosplay account, and at Obsidian _sag _harbor is my lovely captain there holding the trophy. David Wilson, he's a great guy. And sailing is so much fun, and I hope that everybody gets a chance to be on a sailboat at some point in their lives, even if it's not in a race. And I hope that one day we have a game that like really gets the feeling across. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Oh, I forgot. Does anybody have any questions? I padded for time for questions, and we have 10 minutes, and I totally forgot. We have a bunch. You in the front. So as I mentioned, my mom, huge sailor. She won the race we were talking about earlier. It's a race from Newport, Rhode Island to Bermuda. She sailed and won that race through a hurricane with 30-foot swells. I don't know if you can even like picture how big a 30-foot wave is, but she sailed through those, hitting her boat like every couple of minutes. And so she actually she got into sailing from my uncle who owned a sailboat, and so I spent summers a lot of the time as a child with him on his sailboat, and so that's really where like my original passion for it came from. Thank you. So if you didn't hear that, I'm sorry, I should be repeating questions. Hypothetically, if there were devs in this room who were thinking about making a sailing game, what is give me the second part again? What mechanics would be in it? What mechanics would be in my dream game and why? Tattoos as achievements. Say that again. Tattoos as achievements. I think wind speed as a detriment more than as a buff. I think it would actually be fun. I think it's scary to start, but I think that if you like practice with the mechanic for like I mean, I've taught 4-year-olds who can do it. So I think that like we can handle it. And really, if you've ever played Guns of Icarus, if I could have that but sailing, that would be awesome. Sea of Thieves comes really close. Sea of Thieves does come really close, but yeah, that would be awesome because Guns of Icarus also had like skills. It had like different loadouts. There's a sequel coming out. Oh, it's a space sequel. I mean, that's okay. It's like another Jump Space and another Void Crew. It's all right. It's all right. That's what I heard. That's what I heard. Yeah. So I mean, like, there's so many things that I feel like I couldn't. I mean, it was on the slide. I didn't say it out loud, but when I talk about all the different aspects of sailing, it sounds like a game with feature creep. Like it's just too much. So I in my dream game would have everything. My realistic dream game would have to sort of as any game would have to measure what is more beneficial to the game or not. Sorry to give you like a very political non-answer, but you in the crown. That's a great question. That's a really great question, actually. So the question was like the difficulty between multiplayer and single player in these games. How much sailing can a single player actually do? And that, depends on the size of the boat. Again, when we look at Sea of Thieves, they have different boats for how many players you have on it. And I guess, if we look at my brain goes to Star Wars Republic Commandos, where you have like you have your squad and you can order them. You say, hey, do this, hey, do that. If you saw the video earlier, we had Chris, we call him Mao because he sits in the back and he tells us what to do. Exactly, like, and so I think if, especially if, as most single player games are, you're not one of the crew, you're the skipper, you're the captain, you're behind the wheel, so you're already in sort of a stationary position where you can look around and sort of usher out commands to NPCs, if it were. And then in an ideal game, you could substitute those NPCs for real players, which I think was a mechanic in Guns of Icarus. I could be wrong on that. Great question. On our boat, and I'm gonna doctor your question a little bit. Just so, on a sailboat, what are the different roles? So we have the skipper, who is very often, but not always, the captain. Captain generally being the guy in charge, the owner of the boat. The skipper is the guy who is steering the boat. And then we have a general umbrella, which is crew, which is basically anybody who's not the skipper. Inside of crew, we have a bunch of different roles that can change depending on your boat. We have a bow team, which is what I'm a part of. I'm pulling on the halyards and raising and lowering sails. We have Brian on our bow team, who his main job is to be like support for me, or to like catch the sail as it comes down. Pam, honestly, most of her job is calling the wind, and she's so fucking good at it. Um, we have Doug, who his whole job is he controls the line, which a line is a rope. He controls the line for the mainsail, so he's the one he just sits there and he adjusts it for the wind. And so we have people who do that. We have Chris, who I would say, if we're going off of like older terms, I would call him the quartermaster. He really just kind of sits in the back and yells at us. Um, and he's great at that, honestly. I've sailed on a boat where we had a course caller, and they literally weren't even topside. They sat below deck looking at the charts, like that crazy depth chart that I had earlier. And she would shout up to the skipper and she'd be like, you need to tack in 3 seconds. Or like, you need to adjust 3 degrees to the left. You need to adjust this way. So, like, think of any possible job on a boat, and if you have someone specialized enough, you could justify having that person do that one thing. Then we have to start thinking about weight and like how heavy your boat is, because that could slow it down. But if you're like not racing, that probably isn't a huge concern. Overwhelming number of hands. You. What is my role in Barrow? I'm a gunner. Thank you. Is my ideal sailing game focusing on parts of all of those roles, or focusing on one role? Um, hmm. That's a thinker right there. Uh, my gut reaction is parts of all of the roles. I think one of the things I love about sailing is doing it with my friends. And so, like, I not to add another, 4-player co-op game to the world, but they've been doing pretty well lately. And so I think that like being able to focus on parts of the role so that all the players or NPCs have something to do is fun. You in the ascot in the back. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Okay. Now the most satisfying thing I ever did in sailing was a race in Annapolis. It was a relatively small boat. It was a Rhodes 19 feet. We had me and two crewmates. We were coming up on two boats that were pretty close to each other, but there was a gap in between them. I really felt like I was doing some Jack Sparrow shit. And I was the skipper. I was telling them what to do. So we're catching up on them. We were sailing wing and wing, which means we had one sail to one side, one sail to the other. We're catching up. We're going right between the boats. I'm like, okay, when I count down, you guys are gonna pull in the sails, and then once we pass them, we're gonna release them. And we glide up to them as our bow starts passing their sterns. I give the command. They pull the sails in over the boat. We had enough speed that we glided past them. There was probably 3 inches on either side. And then just as our sails passed their boats, we released, caught the wind, and sailed past them. Thank you. Ooh, putting me on the spot. That that's fair. I well, just thinking about it, I think because most sails don't have collision, because so it's not even a concern. I also think that most sailing games, it's this is more because of a time period that the sailing games take place. The sails in older boats don't actually hang out of the boats that much. They definitely do, but not to the same degree that they can on modern boats. I also think well, I mean, honestly, I think you could, other than like having to think about pulling the sails in and releasing them, I do think that's something you could do in a lot of sailing games currently. But that is a good question. Expedition 33. Oh, good, 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 good. Are most of my races within a day? And if not, what are the challenges of racing at night? No, not all races are within a day. One race that my mom actually was gearing up to do before she suffered from a life-threatening head injury on the water was the Whitbread, which is actually a race that circumnavigates the globe. So yeah, no, not all, and even the Newport Bermuda race that she did a few times was like 3 4 days long. The trouble with sailing at night is there's a lot. So one, we need to look at our sails to know how they're responding to the wind. You can't necessarily do that at night. Back in the day, you might have storm lanterns. You could shine on them, or you kind of just hoped and prayed. Um, right now, we have flashlights, and sometimes we actually put glow tape on the sails so we can see how they are acting in the middle of the night. Another issue you have is just seeing anything. Um, I may have been, I mean, it wasn't even at night, it was just foggy, and we were like, there's a lighthouse there. They're there for a reason. My uncle was just like, no, no, the chart says we're good. We're like, there's a lighthouse that boom. So visibility is a huge issue when you're sailing at night. My mom said that the scariest thing she's ever experienced on the water was not the 30-foot swells. It was a cargo ship in the middle of the night. And the cargo ships have so many lights on. You are supposed to have navigation lights so you can look at a boat in the middle of the night and say, that boat's going that way, or that boat's going that way. Unfortunately, there's so many lights on a cargo ship, you can't tell which ones are the navigation lights. And it's kind of hard to tell how close you are. And so they had no idea if they were going to get run over by this cargo ship until eventually they were like, we can hear the motors. We need to turn away. So yeah, visibility is a huge issue. And I would say that this is actually another thing that I didn't consider in my slideshow, actually, but you bring up a great point, is crew. There's a great sea shanty called 4 Hour Lives because that's generally how long your shifts are if you are doing overnight stuff. You're on duty for 4 hours, you're off duty for 8 hours. In an ideal world, you have 3 groups that can cycle through. And, you know, there's so many things. We, believe it or not, we still don't have a great solution for like hot food on smaller boats. You know, we do have like a stove on ours, but we have to think about weight and, you know, like generator, and like it's electric, and is it worth bringing the gas for the generator to heat up a bowl of soup, or am I just going to have a cold MRE for the day? I usually opt for the MRE personally, but yeah, there's a lot. And being in that rotation on the water for an extended period of time does take a mental toll on you. Like there's no doubt in it. Like your crew needs to rest. That's so many sea shanties are just about like, can't wait to be on land. You know, like the water's great, but I want to sleep for a full day. Yeah, thank you for that question. The black shirt. Yeah. Valheim, yes. I was working on this PowerPoint in Discord while my friends were playing Valheim, and they're like, bro, you're wrong. We can't go in this direction. I'm like, that I'm gonna ignore that one. That's so exciting. I'm gonna do that when I get home. So if you didn't hear the game design document for me to send to Discords and devs, I'm definitely doing that when I get home. You've had your hand up forever. Have I ever played Pirates of the Burning Sea? I've never heard of Pirates of the Burning Sea, but I'll add it to the list of games people have given me today about sailing. Oh, love that. Beautiful. I will be trying that out. Pirates of the Burning Sea. For those of you who didn't hear, I won't explain everything he said, but it sounds pretty good. Eeny, meeny, miny, miny, you. To lose. Okay, no, because you need to finish with all of your crew. I almost jump shipped after a race to get picked up by my mother and my stepdad in their boat. But my captain, I had like my stuff in a bag, and I took my shirt off and I was ready to jump and just tread water till they showed up. And my captain was like, "That's really stupid. We'll just let them pull up alongside us." I'm like, "All right, I thought it was fun. My bad." Blue Jacket, you've had your hand up. Yikes. I love Zomboid. Sure. Yeah. I think that sailing in the real world is very inaccessible. I live in an area that is like super aquatic. So it's like I'm literally getting a sailboat for free in spring. I'm trading it for a case of beer. So like sailing's super accessible for me. But for most people, and most people don't live, you know, I mean, I don't have stats. I shouldn't just spew BS. Most people don't necessarily live on the water, so like they're not exposed to it, so they don't understand how fun it is. But I think that if devs who make games like that learned about how dangerous sailing is, I've said I've almost died, that they would love to work on something like that. And I am at time. I know I have more questions. If you're like really committed to your question, I would love to talk to you in the hallway, or you can come up to me while I break down my stuff. Or you can message me on Instagram. I love talking about sailing. You might not want to get me in Discord because I'll talk to you for hours. But thank you again so much for coming. Have a great mag, everybody.